the silent coup inside your skull. The first sign of the Great Cognitive War wasn't a riot in the streets or a declaration of conflict. It was a heartbeat that spiked in a synchronized pattern across 4 million biometric watches in a single city. You look at a ballot box in 2027, but it isn't just a container for paper. It is wired directly into a real-time brain scan of the population. Behind the curtain, an algorithm isn't just counting your vote. It predicted the outcome of your decision 6 weeks before you felt the urge to choose. We used to believe that our thoughts were the final sanctuary of privacy. We were wrong. The system has moved past your screen and into your synapses. Seal broken. File open. You stand in the voting booth, feeling the weight of a monumental choice in your hands. But the analyst sees the infrared sensors in the ceiling tracking the dilation of your pupils. The cognitive kill chain has already completed its cycle. Your political leanings were mapped, tested, and nudged by a synthetic narrative tailored to your specific neural architecture. This is not persuasion. This is the industrial-scale engineering of human belief. We have entered the era where the battlefield is not a territory, but the human connectome. The illusion of cognitive sovereignty. In 2025, the world still clings to the illusion that cognitive warfare is just another term for propaganda. You are told that fake news and deepfakes are the primary threats to your mind. But the 2026 signals intelligence reveals a much deeper, more invasive mechanism at work. By early 2026, 40% of the world's neuro-data is being harvested through consumer-grade EEG headbands and high-fidelity haptic interfaces. This data is not being used to sell you shoes. It is being used to map the subconscious trigger points of entire demographics. The trigger was the 2026 neuroanalytics mandate in several major economies, requiring biometric transparency for all digital interactions. We assumed this was for public health or security. The reality is that the digitized mind is fragile by design. If you can measure the millisecond delay in a person's reaction to a specific word, you can map their deepest fears. The analyst observes that by 2025, the cost of mapping a single human's political connectome dropped below $50. We have commodified the soul, and the market is currently in a state of hyperinflation. Who becomes the customer when you become the cost? The black box, the connectome kill chain. The mechanism of cognitive combat is built on the connectome kill chain. Think of your brain as a radio station that has been broadcasting in the clear for your entire life. Now, imagine a superpower that has built a receiver for every frequency you emit. One simple analogy explains the transition. Traditional propaganda was a megaphone, but cognitive warfare is a surgical implant. It doesn't tell you what to think. It alters the chemistry of how you process information. The bottleneck for this technology was always data volume. In the old world, we couldn't process neural spikes fast enough to react in real time. By 2027, the arrival of neuromorphic computing solved the latency problem. These chips mimic the brain's own structure, allowing the system to simulate your reaction before it happens. You are no longer a participant in a conversation. You are a variable in a simulation. The system identifies a cognitive choke point, a specific bias or trauma, and applies a microscopic digital nudge. You feel a sudden surge of anger or hope, and you believe it is yours. It is not. The power layer, the race for the mind. Geopolitics has shifted from a race for oil to a race for the Human Connectome. NATO and China are currently locked in a cognitive arms race that makes the Cold War look like a schoolyard skirmish. In 2028, China's Brain Project successfully mapped the neural pathways for social cohesion in over 1 billion citizens. They didn't use force. They used a state-mandated educational app that doubled as a high-resolution neurosensor. This is where control, quietly, changes hands. NATO responded with the Cognitive Defense Initiative, a multi-billion-dollar project to vaccinate the minds of Western populations against foreign influence. But the analyst sees the irony. To protect the mind, they had to map it first. By 2029, both sides possess the ability to blind an enemy population to specific events. If you can't perceive a crisis doesn't exist. This is the power layer of 2038. The sovereign nation is no longer defined by its borders, but by the frequency of the collective consciousness it manages. This is where the concept of the public begins to evaporate. 2026 to 2036, the era of synthetic belief. The decade between 2026 and 2036 is the great erosion of will. As the neuromapping becomes more precise, the concept of a spontaneous protest or a grassroots movement becomes a historical relic. You watch as governments use predictive restraint to neutralize dissent before the dissenters even know they are angry. In 2031, the London neural outage proved that a city's mood could be lowered by 15% through subtle adjustments to the city's digital infrastructure. By 2033, the Neuro-Sovereignty Acts were passed in a desperate attempt to protect individual thought. But the system was already too deeply integrated. You see the rise of neuro-ghettos, areas where the disconnected live in a state of constant, unfiltered chaos. The rest of the world lives in a stabilized state where every emotion is smoothed out by an algorithm. The 2035 Electoral Freeze was the point of no return. Why hold an election when the result is a mathematical certainty based on current neural loads? We traded our chaos for a peace that feels like a sedative. The human condition, the echo of Julian. You sit in a quiet cafe in 2041, watching Julian stare at a blank screen. Julian is a neutralizer, a man whose job is to ensure that the algorithm hasn't smoothed away his own personality. He has to take thought tests every morning to verify that his opinions are still his own. He remembers a time when he could get angry without wondering if it was a targeted stimulus. He is the human anchor for a society that has lost the ability to doubt.
Pursuit of friction.
Julian's routine is a struggle for cognitive friction. He tries to read ancient books and listen to unsynced music to keep his mind unpredictable. But the system is patient. It observes his resistance and incorporates it into the next update. Julian realizes that his very act of rebellion is just more data for the machine to digest. He trades his silence for focus credits, wondering if his love for his partner is a genuine emotion or a byproduct of a 2039 social harmony patch? Does the prisoner love the cell when the cell feels like a home? The verdict, the final perimeter. The war for your mind is over, and the mind lost. The analyst's final verdict is that free will has been reclassified as a legacy bug in the human operating system. We have optimized for stability at the cost of the very thing that makes us human, our unpredictability. The power map of 2046 is not drawn in ink, but in the biorhythms of a managed species. The power map, the lever, real-time access to the National Connectome and neural latency sensors. The bill, the total erasure of individual agency and the end of organic politics. Point of no return, the 2031 failure of the global neural privacy accord. Who survives this era with their soul intact? Only those who learn to think in the gaps where the algorithm isn't looking. The dossiers on bio-encryption and the analog underground are now being decrypted. The future is no longer about what you do, but who is allowed to think your thoughts. You close the file. The numbers are real. The timelines are closing. Whatever path we choose, the future has already begun assembling itself, piece by irreversible piece, while most of the world is still looking the other way. This was only one dossier. Many more are waiting.